Hey everyone, I'm TJB Chris. Welcome back to the channel, and tonight we're finishing up in my little impromptu mini-series on remote booting operating systems, which are generally associated with a hard disk, in machines that lack the aforementioned hard disk. In our last couple of episodes, we touched on MS-DOS, along with a little Windows 3.1, not quite an operating system, but an operating environment, and then we moved on to Windows 95 in Part 2, and all served up by a Windows NT Server 4 played by my Dell Dimension XPST 600R. Well, tonight, we're going to follow things up with my favorite operating system, one that is near and dear to my heart, partially because my experience with it got me my first real job while I was in college, and that is OS/2 Warp. Tonight we are going to remote boot an OS/2 Warp Connect client version 3.0 on my diskless Tandy 2500 SX25. Except this time, we're going to be using as the server my Tandy Multimedia PC PC Model 20 running OS/2 Warp Server 4 Advanced Server Edition. So let's take a closer look at our contenders. And now front side, this is my Tandy Multimedia PC Model 20. And last time it was one of my diskless workstations, but this time I have installed an SD card with one of those little IDE SD card adapters to serve as my hard disk. And it is running OS/2 Warp Server 4 Advanced Edition. And I can hear you already. You're typing to your keyboard. But TJB Chris, you're typing real fast. That's not OS/2 Warp 4. OS/2 Warp 4 looks like this. Well, OS/2 Warp Client 4, you know, codename Merlin, the wizard, also from the Sword and the Stone, looks like that. Well, the Sword and the Stone wizard doesn't look like OS/2 Warp Client 4, though he is very blue, and so is it. Anyway, I digress. OS/2 Warp Client 4 is actually a different code base. OS/2 Warp Server 4 was based on the OS/2 Warp 3 code base. And one need look no further than OS/2 Warp Server's packaging to see that this is in fact true. Let's look at the back of the box. See, look at that. We've got OS/2 screenshots. It even points out that it is in fact based on the OS/2 Warp 3 codebase. And let's flip her around to the front, and now you can see that we are looking at version 4. This came out in 1996, the same year that the Warp 4 client came out. If you're looking for an OS/2 Warp Server operating system based on the Merlin Warp 4 client, you're looking for OS/2 Warp Server for e-business, which this is not. Okay, so otherwise this machine is exactly the same, aside from the fact that I've also upgraded its RAM from 16 megs to 32 megs, and we'll talk about why later. And next up, of course, is my ever-present diskless machine, and also somewhat mascot of the channel, probably second place behind the Model 12. This is my Tandy 2500 SX25 in exactly the same configuration as last time. Network adapters, no hard disk, everything is the same. It's literally just going to ask a different server for the answer now. Actually, there is one other difference. I did upgrade the RPL boot ROM. It turns out in all of my searching, I skipped over or missed the fact that RetroTech Chris has the 2.0 version of the BootWorks ROM on his GitHub. Link in the video description. I thank you, RetroTech Chris, for pointing that out to me. I was using version 1.7. I still have to hit Control-Alt-B, but I think that's because I'm not using a flashable part that's in place flashable. But anyway, the boot ROM is better. It does support more features and has more boot protocol support. So it is now what's in here. Otherwise, the machine's configuration is exactly the same as last time, and it is in fact still hard diskless. All right, let's go talk a little more about the project. Okay, so of course we've got our diskless machine over here, and we've got our server running over here. As I mentioned, the OS/2 Warp server has a default install. It is in fact running an IBM LAN server domain controller, set as the primary domain controller. OS/2 is a little different for the security than Windows NT, but you know, you'll kind of see and notice that, but we won't get into that here. That's a whole other video on its own. That is installed. Also, some basic protocols are installed, the help files and everything else, but I did not install any of the remote boot items. All of that server stuff is still not on the machine, and we're going to go install that tonight to get it working. Now, for this project, I didn't have available to me any real documentation with step-by-steps like I did for the Windows project. The Windows NT documentation and the Windows 95 resource kit provided me pretty much step-by-step documentation for getting started. That didn't happen for OS/2. In fact, finding good OS/2 documentation, not necessarily the easiest. I did come across a red book on bitsabers.org, which does explain the OS/2 RPL process for OS/2 2.0 and OS/2 1.3, and that does give you a pretty good foundation for how OS/2 RPL works. The underpinnings are very similar, but it lacks a lot of the nuance and features that came along with Warp 3 and later. It's also worth pointing out that in terms of Warp Server 4, don't run any fix packs on here. Later fix packs actually remove some of the graphical tools I'm going to use to configure RPL boot for this thing, so stick with the base CD-ROM image that you find on winworldpc.com. And I also did find all of my best documentation in the most unlikely, but in OS2 land, actually likely of places, and that is the online help. Let's take a look. Looking here at my freshly installed OS2 Warp server, I've got an information screen here, and I've got, if you hear that little whoop sound, you know, that. The machine has a sound card in it, and I decided to enable it. If I get annoyed by the sounds, I'll turn them off, but I always kind of like those warpy sounds. Network administration tools. And if I go to IBM's little search button here and type RPL, even though I haven't installed the RPL stuff yet, all the help is there. Start here. Setting up remote RPL for DOS and OS2 requesters. You can look through this and it will tell you all you need to know about the various things that need to be set up to get this to work, how the RPL mapping files work, where they live, OS2 LAN adapter support, which is actually going to be important to us later, more NDIS support for adapters, unsupported adapters, MCA machines, FIT files for file systems, image definition files. All this stuff is here, and quite frankly, this is where I learned it. Now, this is not going to step-by-step you through it. You're going to have to kind of plow through this and look at it, but it gets better because I've decided to do something very uncharacteristic for the channel. I've made this. This here's a step-by-step. This is a step-by-step instruction set. I'm not known for my step-by-steps. Quite frankly, if there's something that has documentation already out there, I'm not regurgitating it. But I also can't really do my step-by-step documentation the way that some folks can. And it's really because I needed notes and didn't have them. And then I thought, well, it's close enough. I can polish this turd a bit, make them look a little nicer. So that's what we're doing. And I've got along with me here. I haven't actually tested these since I updated them. So if there are errors, I'm going to update them. I have this ancient instrument here. This is a pen. Look at this. And this is kind of neat. So what you do is you press down on it and ink happens. And then it writes on the page and you get these words and things that I wrote. So I'll make notes and this will be up on my GitHub. Yeah, I'm a little sarcastic, but it's a Thursday. I'm in that kind of mood, folks. So this is what this is. I'm going to put this up and make it available for you. Now, as I should mention with any step-by-steps, different hardware, different configurations, you'll probably get different prompts, but at least should give you an idea of the overall steps you're doing, what you need to do to get this working. That combined with the Red Book should be enough. And we'll talk about step one when we get there. And to make it even easier for you, I have put this documentation up on screen for you. Just like last time, we're going to do this little three-way thing that we like to do here with these videos. All right, let's get right to the project. I'm going to follow along with my trusty documentation. And we are going to make sure that we've talked about everything. Oh yes, system requirements. I forgot to mention, you want your server system to be at least a 486. You want a gig of hard drive space, an OS2 compatible network adapter, duh. OS2 compatible video, if not, the VGA driver will work. You need a working CD-ROM drive and floppy drive, and I will warn you that OS2 is extremely finicky with storage devices. CD-ROM drives, hard drives, blah, blah, blah. Client system, any OS2 Warp 3.0 Connect compatible machine, 386SX processor, which I'm running the very minimum here. 8 megs of RAM is the recommended minimum here because you're going to need networking. No hard disk, and if you have one, disconnect it. Ethernet switches, cables, blah, blah, blah. The same isolated segment thing applies as to my last video. I'm not doing this on my general LAN. And you'll need copies of OS2 Warp Connect 3.0 and OS2 Warp Server Advanced Server Edition 4.0. Both are available on winworldpc.com. All right, I know I fire hosed through that because the meat is here. And I realize there are YouTube channels that can seem to get away with blathering for 40 minutes, and apparently people watch them. My analytics says otherwise, my friends. So, I know some of you do. That's fun, but many of you don't. Okay, that sounds kind of getting annoying. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here is step one is install OS2 Warp Server 4. Warp Server is installed. All right, step two, boot your newly installed OS2 server. Hey, look, desktop. Step 3, run OS2 LAN services configuration and installation. And that's in the LAN services file and print folder. We're going to give this a run here. And we get this giant IBM splash, and we're going to kick the OK button. I always think rounders. OK. Teddy KGB. If you haven't seen that movie, it's good. Okay. Here we want, I did not put this on the instructions, but I've already broken out my ancient artifact, the pen, and written it in. We need to run the tailored install. Say hi to Taylor for me. We need to install or configure this workstation. I'm going to slide over here a bit so I can more easily reach the keyboard. Now, this is already configured as a domain controller, so I'm just going to click OK. Do that during the OS install. You'll save yourself some time. Now, do you want to reinstall MPTS? No. And we're waiting. And if this takes too long, I'll not make you wait too long. There we go. Took a sip of root beer there. It's not quite whiskey time yet, friends. All right, the network adapter was detected. We're going to click OK. We don't want to change it. And now we need to look at our protocols. So we can see here we've got the 3COM EtherLink 3 family adapter, just like last time. IEEE 802.2, you need that for the DLC layer RPL protocol. OS2 NetBIOS, you need that, the equivalent of NetBEUI. And TCP/IP not required, but I have it here just in case I wanted it. Click OK. Now we want to install or remove a component. Let me look at my instructions and make sure they line up. And now we want to choose the OS2 Remote IPL Service and the DOS Remote IPL Service and click the Install button. It's going to tell me that after LANinst completes, you've got to use the RPL inst utility to install the correct OS2 version to the remote RPL directory if it has not already been installed. So yes, yes, yes. And then after that, there's a get RPL utility. We'll cover all of that later, my friends. And then for the DOS remote RPL, you've got to run get RPL after you're done. Gotcha. Okay, after all changes are made, you can see the action is now installed. We're going to click OK. Now we want to configure a component. Configuration required. You got to click configure, you dummy. And we're going to say this. You click copy. This, you click copy. Then you click OK. Now it's going to ask you to specify the drive on which. I love that the fact they don't end their sentences in prepositions. So specify the drive on which to install the remote IPL subdirectory, IBM LAN RPL. We want drive C. Same goes for the IBM RPL user directory. That will be drive C. Now we have to configure the DOS remote RPL service. And I just got a little drum roll there. A version of DOS does not currently exist on this server, and a copy is not available from the remote installation subdirectory. Do you want to copy a version of DOS from diskette? That's how, yes, I do. We're going to do two OSs. What you guys get the bonus tonight. OS2, MS, or PC DOS. I've got it for you. You're going to love this. Okay. So we're going to copy and copy. And we're going to do DOS 7.0. That's what I've got here for you. Since install is going to give the jig up. Okay. Default's pending. That's fine. Now we're going to click OK. Now I'm going to double check my instructions here, and we need to click to apply the changes. So I'm going to click to apply. We're going to move you to the next page. And now it's telling us we have to stop the OS2 LAN server. It's currently running. It starts with startup.cmd, so we're going to click OK there. And eventually, we'll have another prompt. And if you're reading ahead, you already know what that prompt is. And now we have the hard disk space information dialog. The installation configuration program will determine the amount of hard disk space required. If another process allocates hard disk space, blah, 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 could cause errors. Yep. It's going to check things and update things. All right, so let's throw in my very official OS2 Warp Server CD-ROM. And we'll just click on the OK button once the drive spins up. And now files will be copied. While this is happening, this is going to be quite the installation here. We should get a few dialogues of this. It's going to copy files. It's going to get to 100% like 3 or 4 times. Naturally, I did this once before because that's how you figure out how to do it. Just going to hope this time it happens like last time. By the way, it's interesting that it used the system speaker to throw that beep at me when it's got a sound card installed. Why didn't it throw a warpy sound at me? Weird. Okay, here we go. Now, by the way, I skip over some of the longer waits on this. Sometimes it'll just sit at a screen saying it's configuring or updating for quite a long time. And quite frankly, you don't need to see that. Now, if you're running on a 486 class system like I am, expect that. Faster machines will do better, but then you run into even more problems trying to make OS2 work. So, and honestly, as a 486 class system goes for a server operating system, This thing's not bad. I don't actually have too much trouble with it with the correct amount of RAM. And for what it's worth, I did set this up with 16 megs of RAM in the first place. And it works. The LAN server, the Warp server tuning app will complain at you. It will work, but you will page a lot. And now, it wants IBM DOS 7 diskette 1. And I did not put that in the instructions. I did them incorrectly. I left out the phase where it prompts you for the Warp CD-ROM. So, hold on, break out Ancient Instrument here, slide keyboard, move soda. This is going to be prompted for Warp CD. There we go. Okay. See? Document updates in real time. The benefits of pen and paper. Okay. Now it wants a version of PC-DOS. It turns out, my friends, we're in luck because we have this boxed copy of PC-DOS 7. Yeah, total boxed copy. I've had this floating around the computer room forever. You can hear the disks moving around in there. I've got the floppy disks, I've got the manuals. We've got the warranty registration card, my friends. Take a look at this. I'm trying to do this one-handed. Look at this. We got floppy disks, and underneath the floppy disks, we've got registration cards and the very thick PC-DOS manual. And there's a customer service and support flyer in there, which is just going to stay back there. So anyway, we're going to use a retail copy of PC-DOS 7 that I don't know where I've got, but I've had it since, geez, at least college. I'm the original owner of this. So let's go ahead and feed it disk 1. Oh, A. You got to type A, because the floppy drive is, you know, A, not D. Again, with the beeping, the system speaker, when it's not actually, it's got the sound card in there. All right, looks like we're about ready to get prompted for disk 2. And as I said 2, there's the beep. So, 2. Okay. See when this disk is done. We go to 100% every time, folks, because I guess this thing just knows I love watching progress bars. All right, rounding the clubhouse turn on diskette 2. We should be pretty close to the end here. And we were. All right. Disk 2 is done. 3. Enter. Another 0 to 100 count off. Okay, looks like. And now coming around turn 5, it looks like we should be coming toward the end of disk 3 here momentarily. It doesn't take awfully long per disk, but. And there we go. Out with the 3, in with the 4. Okay. Once again, they're off. And looks like we're probably coming toward the end of disk 4 here. And there's only one more to go. We're just about there. PC-DOS 7 comes on 5 diskettes. So we should be just about done with disk 4. They seem to take, again, about a minute apiece, give or take. And look at that. Out with the 5, 4, in with the 5. Out with the 5, in with the 5, out with the 4. And for the very last time, for PC-DOS. And here we go. All right, light's gone out. I'm going to eject disk 5. So we're done with PC-DOS. I thought you guys might like that retail copy. It's been in my cabinet forever. I wasn't even going to do DOS, and then I realized when I saw the DOS requester support, that's client in OS2 parlance is requester. You know, we've got servers and requesters. So while that's going, let's just package up our PC-DOS package. Once again, more memory for DOS and Windows games and applications, my friends. And on the back, it comes with all sorts of cool tools, all sorts of fun stuff for you. Just honestly, I can't even believe I had it, and I'm even happier the discs worked. It's even more fun, kind of like the video I did on doing Xenix from the install floppies. Like, it's even a little more fun to do this. Okay, we're back to the CD-ROM. And here we are finishing up this particular progress dialog. There are many. The one thing about this process is it can be a tad lengthy, but honestly, it's pretty straightforward. Once I figured out how and where to go, OS2 doesn't make getting the components installed all that difficult. It's just a little time consuming. And again, we're on the lower end of an OS2 warp server here, so some time is to be expected. And finally, we're at the end of the installation process for the components. This is the file backup dialog. We need to back up config.sys and IBM LAN.ini, which we will now do. Okay, so now, except for one misstep that I hadn't already missed before, I've only had 2 things to pen in so far. We're not too bad. Okay, so to put the changes into effect, we've got to stop applications, shut down OS2 with the pop-up menu, and restart my workstation. It's funny that servers are workstations and workstations are servers, but it's the client OS. It's what they did. All right, I'm going to close this because if I don't, OS2 is going to open it back up when I restart the system, and we're going to click Shut Down, and we're going to click OK. And this may take a moment because if the server service is running and the requester service is running, there it goes, OS2 will sit there and appear to do nothing, and the service is shutting down. Okay. To reboot, I'm actually going to let the camera, I know you're going to see a little flicker here, focus on this, but for some reason my screen capture device does not like the transition from 800 to 600. Oh, there it is. To the text screen, you can see that it's a little cut off. That's better than I usually get. Usually it doesn't show any text. So what's going to end up happening here is the logo will pop up correctly, I believe, but the text screen does not. So last time it didn't even show the text screen. So I was going to just let you see the text go by so you would know something was happening. And of course, as is usual, you do this 4 times and it does that. Now it tells you, now it does something different. And we're coming up. Okay, here comes our server and requester. So when you start the server, the requester has to start first. Then the server service will start. So we're just going to wait for this to finish. While we're waiting for it, it'll take a little bit. We have to download the OS2 Warp Connect ISO from WinWorld PC, burn it to a disk, and insert it to your CD-ROM drive. Well, better than that, I have my own very official old copy of OS2 Warp Connect 3 that I burned oh so long ago. Look at this. You can see how official it is. It's got marker and everything. And we now have this. I'm going to insert it into the CD-ROM drive and continue to await completion of the network services. Removing, of course, my very official Warp Server 4 Advanced Server CD-ROM. Okay, here comes the server service. And once it is done, now this next step isn't in any documentation. However, when I first tried to set this up, I couldn't get OS2 to play nice with the Warp Connect CD-ROM in the drive. It would either tell me the drive was invalid or begin the file copy and then fail. So in kind of grasping at straws, I got it in my head that, sometimes if I copy things to the hard drive, it will play nicer. This next step copies the installation files from the OS2 CD-ROM onto the hard drive, and then we'll follow the next steps with the hard drive in its place. And that's what these next steps have you do. You're welcome to try and run, step 33 with the CD-ROM in place. Just specify /OS2 image. But in my case, I did not get that to work despite trying many times. And the server service is still starting. This can take its time. There we go. Okay, so let's open this up in OS2 window. So we're going to do this. We are going to open an OS2 window and navigate to the root of the C drive, and we're going to run this following command. We're going to unpack the disk 7 image from the OS2 CD-ROM. Particularly, we're going to unpack the RPL inst file. And this is real important. When you're installing OS2 Warp, you need to run the RPL inst utility for the version of the client that you're running. So you've got to pull it off an installation disk, usually disk 7, of the OS2 installation media that you're going to use to install your client operating system. Real important. So here's what we're going to do. Unpack, and we're going to say d:\OS2 image, disk 7, and this is going to be RPL, oh, it's underbar 7, you forgot your underbar, RPL inst. And what did I do wrong? RIPL, oh, I remember. It's RIPL. So another interesting thing, IBM likes the RIPL, RIPL, Remote Initial Program Load, versus the shortened RPL that is common A in their documentation and B in Windows and DOS and other operating systems. Why they do this, I don't know, but it's not consistent. So hence the brain fart. Now we're going to copy the image files, the disk image files from the OS2 CD-ROM, as I mentioned before. Again, you can totally try it without that. You do have to do the RPL inst or IPL inst command. You have to bring that down. But you could try and do this from the CD-ROM. I'm not going to try that because it never works for me. So we're going to make dir disks, cd disks. We're going to xcopy /s/ed :/os2 image. And we're going to take that to wax star dot. Okay. Caught me with my bourbon there. It's now late enough that I've added a little whiskey to the mix because Thursday evening, computers, whiskey, why the hell not? Okay, files copied. We're going to remove the CD-ROM. And now we're going to run the ripple inst utility that I so wrongly spelled before. And we're going to get this little product information splash. Now, because I've moved the source file directory, we're going to go to c:/c. Apparently I can't do that. /disks. We're going to click OK. Now we're going to leave the directory for the target where it is, os2.30. That's the OS2 operating system, version 3. And we're going to click on the install directory and let this thing go to town. And this will install a copy of OS2 Warp 4 from the source in consumable form in the IBM LAN RPL directory. So this is a pretty neat thing, and you're going to see a pretty big distinction into how OS2 setup works versus how Windows works. And there we are, file copies done. OS2 3.0 for remote IPL has been successfully installed. Let's click OK. And we can exit this. I would very much like to exit the program, thank you. And back at our trusty OS2 window, we now need to, I'm going to leave this window open. I'm going to move it down here, and we're going to open LAN services file and print, and we need to log on. Now here's an interesting little thing about OS2. You know, Windows NT operating systems, all the NTs, 3.1, 3.5, 3.5.1, 4, and up. The security layer covers the operating system. You get user accounts for the operating system and for the network. OS2 is not like that. If you install OS2 Warp Server, the network resources, the LAN server resources are protected by, you know, the LAN server login, but the base OS logs you right in. You could F up everything from outside of LAN server all you want. There's no user account level, at least out of the box. There's no user account level access to the OS2 operating system. All that you can control different access to is the LAN resources that run on the OS2 operating system, the server services. So, little differentiation. So here I have to log on. And I'm going to log on. I created an account during install called administrator, and I gave it a password. I named the domain Armonk because, well, IBM, Armonk, seems fitting. Notice I like thematic. I have a tendency toward the thematic, folks. That's should be pretty prevalent by now. Logon was successful. And now looking at our instructions, we have logged on. We're going to run get RPL from the OS2 window that I just moved. And it's going to checking for RPL map stuff. It's going to go out and look for available operating systems to configure and make available to the RPL configuration. Now we're not quite there yet, but we're close. As you can see, we're getting pretty high up in the step numbers here. We've got one more little bit of tedium in front of us for OS2. And then we've got a couple more steps to get the the DOS requester files set up. And we'll walk through that. And there we are. The RPL.map file has been successfully updated, and we'll come back to that file later. All right, if remote IPL clients with a different adapter type are booted from the server, the file must be edited to enable the appropriate server records. Back to our OS2 window now. We're not quite done. Back when I was walking through the documentation and showing you the RPL documentation from the online help, I mentioned the NDIS adapter and the fact that my 3COM adapters are supported but don't have the drivers installed. For the most part, if you have an NDIS supported adapter like the 3COM EtherLink 3 on OS2 is, then you're going to need to copy the driver. Fortunately for that, I have my very official 3COM EtherLink 3 disk complete with handwritten label. A disk I would insert into drive A. Now on the C drive, we're first going to copy the OS2 driver files. So we're going to go to cd/IBM LAN, and we're going to go to RPL IBM com, and this is going to be Max. I don't know why. We've got a bunch of files here. No big deal. Now we're going to go to drive A. I believe we have an OS2 directory. And let's see, we've got NDIS2. This is where our OS2 stuff's going to be. Yep, there we go, OS2. And we have a .nif and a .os2 file. Now, the documentation also mentions a .msg file, and that it will also mention does not necessarily exist on all drivers. This is one of those drivers. So, copy. Let's do this. EL3 IBM O2.nif. And we're going to call this C:\ELNK3.nif. Now, I don't know if I have to rename this or not, but the OCD in me wants the OS2 driver file and the NIF or network information file, the driver inf file, to have the same name. So we're going to do that. ELNK3 **C:*, that should copy the OS2 file. Now if I dir C:*ELNK ***, I should get those. And you can see we have EtherLink 2, and there's another one, a microchannel adapter, I think, but there's not the eLink 3. And those are all ready to go. Okay, now we have to do the same for the DOS file, so back to drive C we go. And now this time we're going to C IBM LAN, and now we're going to go to DOS LAN, LSP DOS. Now we're going back to drive A, DOS, and we're going to copy back up again the NIF and the DOS file. And again, we're going to do the little rename game just because we can do that. And again, there's no MSG file. So copy EL3 IBM DS.NIF, C:\ELNK3.NIF, and copy ELNK3.* C:\dir ELNK***. And there we go. ELNK3 NIF, ELNK3 DOS, and there we go. I think we are good. Now that we've got our drivers on here, it is time to actually enable them using the rpl.map file. Now, in my experience, when I first tried to set this up, you might be tempted to use the OS2 system editor, you know, this little graphical thing you now see on your screen. However, I don't know if it was word wrap or something else, it did not do well with this file. I think it was probably word wrap. You can turn it off, but I just learned, you know what, stay with a simple text editor that doesn't try anything funny. So we're going to leave that. Instead, I'm going to use the MS-DOS editor. Now, the OS2 operating system does include the DOS editor, includes the IBM DOS editor, but it doesn't include the edit.com command to invoke it. You might remember from MS-DOS 5 that the editor, edit.com, was just a stub to QBasic, which would basically load QBasic/edit. So if you want to run the MS-DOS editor from an OS2 window, you need to run QBasic/edit. There we go. Welcome to the IBM DOS editor. Looks just like the MS-DOS editor. IBM LAN, and we're not in the RPL directory, are we? RPL, yep. RPL.map. You got to be in the right directory, my friends. Okay. What we're looking for here is twofold. So according to my doc, of course, I have for OS2, there's an R230 OET E3 description here. So if I scroll down, you can see the various records here. See this OS2 30 E3, and on the end here, see this is what I was trying to search for. Either I was fat fingering it or the beauties of search. Either way, uncomment that. Okay, save. Now we need to find the DOS equivalent if I want DOS to work. And it should be DOS E3. I think it's you right here. 3C509 EtherLink 3. Yep, this line right here. Uncomment that. File, save, file, exit. Now, probably should have backed up rpl.map, but again, get RPL, get Ripple, we'll get it back, so don't worry about that. Now that we updated rpl.map, let's go back to the OS2 LAN services folder, which is right here. We should already be logged on. We can check by clicking log off. Yep, look, we're logged on. Now we're going to open the LAN server administration item. And here we go, we're loading. Click OK. If you don't click OK, it'll dismiss itself. And now we have our local workstation warp drive. That's the name of the server. Rmonk is our domain, of course. We're going to open this up. And then we're going to choose the services icon here. Let me fix this window that doesn't look quite right. There we go. Services. And we're going to make this so I can read it. And we see we have remote IPL. I'm going to right-click that. I'm going to hit Start, and I'm going to hope that it actually starts. It's going to ask if I want any parameters. Nope, just click Start. And if everything is in place, it's active. Now, I want to give you a little piece of free advice. If you install only the OS2 requester support, you still have to put the DOS NDIS drivers in place if you're using a 3COM3 card. If you don't, the service won't start. And by the way, if you're curious as to how to find that, run net error. And that will show you the errors that happened, and you can figure out what was wrong. I pulled my hair out. You know, Unix-oriented me now is looking for log files. Didn't find any. Net error, and the net logs will tell you. Anyway, that's just a little tidbit for you. The service is in fact active. We're now good. So let's see what's next. Well, I guess we have to open remote IPL requesters, and that's the last step on this page. So let's go back to our LAN services folder. Where are you there? There you are, remote IPL requesters. And I'm going to flip you to the next page. Now I can right-click this and click Create Another, or I can drag it. And dragging in OS2, by the way, is with the right mouse button. So I just hold down the right mouse button, drag this over here, little jet sound. It opens a window to create a new object. So I'm going to choose Enable OS2 Requester. We're going to start with OS2. Machine ID, that's going to be TAN2500. These can't be very long, folks. Each machine gets its own identifier. Tandy 2500 SX25. Network adapter address, this is going to be 00A024, what is that, 13EB92. We're going to go down to parameters. And we've got to choose a server record identifier for OS2. That is going to be the OET3 3COM EtherLink 3. Don't choose the IBM Ethernet one unless you've got one of those adapters, or it's not going to work. I want my RPL boot drive to be C, so I'm going to click C. I'm going to click Create. And this is going to take a second, and while it does, I'm going to take a sip of the good stuff. I'll tell you, folks, nothing beats, in moderation, a little of your favorite beverage, adult or not, and a little retro computing for you. Okay, now it's time to boot the client. We're there, dude. Let's do it. All right, let's boot her up. I'll flip you back to the other screen here once we get it going, but you're going to watch me power on. We're going to push the power button. I'm going to take my little remote here and flip us back to there. And the screens are correct. You're watching this boot. I'm going to press the space bar. Now, I still have to hit Control-Alt-B on the EtherLink boot prompt for BootWorks ROM. And that is because I don't have a flashable part. Now, I mentioned the 2.0 boot ROM. This supports more protocols. RPL, hit F10 to save. And we should, ooh, we're transferring data. Do we have it? Big bucks, no whammies, no whammies. OS2 up the top left, and we got OS2. Okay. This is good, folks. If we're this far, that means good things. We should be in pretty good shape. Here comes OS2 Warp 3.0, connect on a machine with no hard disk. Celebrating a little early. It's not booted up yet. It boots just like it's on a hard disk, my friends. It's actually really freaking cool. This does not get old. After all this, you know, it just doesn't. Again, booting an operating system that is associated with hard disks, and for the average everyday schmo like me, required a hard disk. Without one. You know, and I had some comments in the last ones, and I understand. Like, hard disks are ubiquitous. Why would you do this? Some of it isn't just hard disks. It's not just the idea. It's the idea of centralized configuration management. And a lot of times with these configurations, I know with DOS, you saw in the DOS and Windows 3.1 video, and the Windows 95 to a degree, you have more control over the security of the DOS and operating system file system, the pseudo file system, than one does on a DOS or Windows machine where people are essentially root everywhere and can ruin the local system. So you can stop them from installing things. You can stop them from writing DOS configuration files, blowing up configsys, doing things that users do in inexplicable ways, right? So there's more than just, but hard disks were ubiquitous. I understand the thought, and it is a correct thought, because in the end it won, right? Nobody gave a shit. Just use NT-based operating systems and use group policy. By the way, we have a desktop, which is magic. And, oh, we got the using OS 2 intro. Let's look at this for a bit, folks. So, you're watching a booting, running, protected mode OS 2 Warp 3 client on a system without a hard disk. All right, what do we got here? Using OS 2 will help you learn how to use OS 2. To learn how to use the mouse, press the space bar. To bypass using the mouse and begin the tutorial, press page down or on the button. On, did you mean or? To close, press F3. IBM and F3. It's a little mainframe reference right there. Okay. And we've got all sorts of great stuff. We've got our introduction, stuff that'll happen. Oh, let's do this. OS 2 basics. Honestly, it's not too pokey, and I did notice that. It's not too bad. I mean, this is also a 386 SX25. This machine is basically the minimum for OS 2, so it will be pokey even if it had a hard disk. All right, let's look at the OS 2 desktop object. Okay, so now it gives us a picture of the desktop. OS 2 desktop is what you see on your display screen. And it has, I can practice. It tells me, you know, desktop is a view of your work. The items on the desktop represent items you normally have in your room. Oh, file cabinets, those were the days. Windows. The OS 2 desktop is similar to the Windows Program Manager, although the desktop includes additional functions. Well, that's for sure. Okay, I think I've had about enough of this. Let's look at the actual OS 2 operating system here, folks. And we have an OS 2 system window open. Now, the interesting thing is, despite the fact that I am booted from the LAN, the machine's booting from the MMPC over here, I'm not logged on. Again, to my point about the operating system knows no user-level security, like NT does. It's basically like running Windows 95 connected to an NT domain, right? You boot Windows 95, and aside from some system policy editor tricks that can be done, users can do what they want. So anyway, like we've got some games. Ooh, we've got, let's do Solitaire or Klondike, right? I mean, hell, you're on the network, you're on company time. What's a little game of Solitaire? I earned this 10 minutes. I left 3 whole minutes late yesterday. I've earned 10 minutes of Solitaire, let me tell you. And someone asked me a question during lunch, too. Do people do this? This isn't exactly the fastest deal. Welcome to 386s. Can I bypass it? No. Wow. We're not even going to play this. The cards are going to deal out. We're just going to be done with this. Okay. I think it deals 3. Yeah, 1. Okay. Well, either way, there we are. Yeah, this will go here. I can open this. Ooh, that'll go there. Hello. Oh, lovely. Another king. Love Solitaire. Okay, screw you, Solitaire. Oh, that's right. There's no exit. I have to double-click the close menu. And let's close that. All right, so back to my point about not being logged on. Yeah, I have operating system access, but I don't have access to anything on the server. So let's take a look at UPM services, because that's where the logon prompt is. Let's also fix this. Now, it just occurred to me, I don't think I created myself a user account. Yeah, no matter. I can do that from here. Let's do it. So let's log us on. I'll relog on as the administrator, who is logged on over there, and it will complain about it. Gotta wait for the requester, of course. Now, what you can do, just like in DOS and Windows setups with NT, you can create auto execback and config sys's to start these various services. You can create a startup.cmd on OS 2 to start the requester service if you want. But depending on your configuration, you may not care. So I'm going to be administrator again, and this is my password. We still have audio. Log on in progress. I can't receive messages. There's it bitching. Okay, no problem. Messenger service isn't even running. Okay, let's go to user account management, and let's create me a non-privileged user account from our newly installed Warp machine. Okay, manage users. I want to add a new user ID. Read TJB Chris. TJB Chris. Yay. Okay, my login is allowed. How to create a user account? Denied. I'm a regular user. I'm a peon. Let's give me a password. I'm not going to expire it. Password optional, my butt. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now we're there, now we're there. Now I should be able to log off. Did I mention I know OS2, folks? Log off all, yeah. Okay, now we're going to log back on as P on me, and I'll start the messenger service. So log on. Chris. Logging into Armonk. Did I not? Oh, it's the TJB Chris, you dumb ass. I just created it. Have some more bourbon there, Jack. Hey, that's going to work. Don't mind if I do. Small amounts, folks, small amounts. Like I said last time, that tastes almost as good as success. The fact that this worked on the first try. Okay, let's close this. All right, LAN services. Got a bunch of stuff. Right click. Where are you? Arrange. There you are. Arrange. There we are. Network messaging. Now, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send a new message. And let's do this. I'm going to send this message, my typical Tandy message. Hello, you rummy buzzard. And I'm going to send that to, let's do a list of users. You know what? Let's just send it right over to administrator. Cancel that. Send to, now, there we go. We're sending. And I should, assuming all is well, the messenger service is running over here. Oh, I got a beep. Let's go look. Look at that. Hello, you rummy buzzard. Well, you know what? This butthole needs to get back to work. So, let's just frickin' send this moron a message. Let's close all this. We're going to come back to it in a minute. I realize I'm fooling around because that's half the fun, folks. Okay, actually, I think I have messaging in my list here. There we go. All right, so let's send a new. And I'm going to say, get your butt back to work. You're on probation. We're going to send that to a user. And you can send to multiple users, or you can do a broadcast message to the entire network, TJB Chris. By the way, you can also send a machine. So if someone's on a machine but you don't know who, or don't want to take the time to find out who, you can find out. We're going to click add. I like that my comment shows up there, and we're going to say send to. And now we should, got my remote in hand, get this sent over to me on the Tandy 2500. Eventually. It's not the fastest, folks. And there we are. Get your butt back to work. You're on probation. Well, don't I know me. Okay. Well, that's network messaging. We have ourselves some user accounts. We're going to close this now. And I do not want to save that. See, look at that. And, of course, you saw on the other machine, if I go back there, you can, of course, see we've got the other list of messages here. I can just go do this. No, I won't say that. So we can see I'm there. I'm there. Okay. All right, so what else? Well, let's take a look at some of the LAN resources here, and then we'll get on to PC DOS. So, of course, if I close this, along the lines of the network neighborhood scheme, we've got a network icon here, and we have here the LAN server resource browser. That's OS2 speak for network neighborhood. And do we have resources? We do. We have aliases for the domain, and we've got Warp Drive, which is our server. Let's go open up Warp Drive, see what we've got. I see we're going to have to do some icon arrangement over here. I'm right-clicking. I'm arranging icons. Okay, share for Ripple read-only data, domain controller share. Now, underneath this file system, and let's just actually take a look at this here. Maximize this OS2 window. You can see that there's a bunch of different directories here, but just like MS-DOS and Windows 3.1, that is a pseudo file structure that's defined by what's on OS2 called a fit file, .fit, that lives here, that points the different directories you see on the client over to different server directories, some of which have security attributes set on them, so that users can and can't write to them. For example, I may not be able to write to the OS2 directory, but the root directory I can. And that's a lot to go into for this video. We've already covered this enough. It's already long enough. But it is something that you can control. You can create additional directory areas. You can also, just like NT, DOS, and Windows, create network shares, connect the network drives, and have users use those as separate storage spaces. You've got a lot of options. And just like Windows 95, each machine gets its own directory on the server that is basically its little workspace, its scratch space. So there's a lot of different places and ways that a network administrator back then could have dealt with files on OS/2 versus on Windows. And also, I mean, Windows also and DOS has its own versions of this kind of thing. It's just done differently whether you're talking DOS clients with Windows 3.1 versus, you know, Windows 95 and the server-based setup type installation. Anyway, enough of that blathering. Let's talk about PC-DOS 7. How am I going to make this machine boot PC-DOS 7? Well, let's pick up my trusty remote, go back over to the server, close the messenger. Don't shrink, close it, just shrink it. And I'm going to close this OS/2 window. Actually, I'm not going to close this OS/2 window. There's one more thing I have to do here that I realize I may not have included in my doc or skipped over. I skipped over it. Okay, so we're going to go through this the hard way. And we're going to do this. I'm going to use the documentation to which I referred earlier. We're going to use the make image utility. We're going to create a DOS image from diskette. We're going to use make image utility. Okay. So I mentioned DOS requesters. And for DOS, there's an extra step you have to take in order to make a bootable RPL boot image that can boot your client with MS-DOS or with PC-DOS. So they're not the same. And so what I have to do here is create a file, or create an image, a bootable image, based on a disk of my choice, essentially a requester disk of my choice. There's different configurations. Let's go look at those, actually. So if I go next, next, ooh, next, next. Oh, all sections, search, okay. If I go for setting up DOS OS/2, let me just look for this. I don't remember where it was. I knew I forgot something. Let's see. There we are. DOS. Oh, here we go. Make image utility. I mentioned it. And there are a bunch of different pre-configured images here. This is what I was looking for. That show the name of the definition files. So there's a definition file that will create a bootable image that will then reference the PC-DOS diskette images that were installed during the Warp server installation. That was a lot of word barf. So we have 3.5, 720K images, etc. We're going to stick with the 1.4 meg images, 3.5 inch, 1.4 meg. I don't think that came out right when I first set it. Regardless. We have the basic redirector, the full redirector, protected mode, and then we've got the full redirector with high mem support and then with UMB. Clearly, we want the UMB support one because that one gives us the most available additional memory in addition to the 640K conventional that you get on the client. So, with that in mind, I want this one, std3 humb.def, and let me break out my ancient writing apparatus and make sure I note on this page to add the steps for DOS REQ, that's requester, make img steps to boot DOS, because I like to be redundant. Then I'm going to use std3humb.def. See, how's that for efficiency, folks? I'm going to go, what the hell did I mean by that? Okay, so I do want std3humb, and if I go back here, like I said, it lists all the various bits. And if I go to the utility image, it actually gives me an example. So this is my point about, there may not be step-by-step doc, but if you look through this, it will give you what you need. So if I go down here, I go to examples. If I go to here, here's the one I want. Let's go back to my OS/2 window, Control Escape. By the way, OS/2, Control Escape, window list, your friend. All right, so now what we need to do is we need to run make image, img, and now we need to do std3humb/f1.4. There we go. The image was successfully built. Okay, now let's close the help. Now with that closed, let's clean up some windows here. Let's go back to the local workstation because I closed the requesters management. I'm going to go to remote IPL requesters, and actually what I'm going to do first is we're going to exit on the other side. Let you see this here. We're going to close this and close this and close this. Control escape the window list. I did close messages. If you don't close something in OS 2, application, window, anything, it will reopen when you restart. Major pitfall of OS 2. If you have a billion things open and the machine crashes or you restart it without shutting your shit, it will open all those windows again on you. So it's best to double check. Okay. Now before I mess with this, I'm going to shut this down. So let's just Control Escape, Launchpad, Alt D. Okay. Now we're going to shut down. It'll take a minute. It's got to sync the disks. Okay. Now this thing is shut down. I did want to change things out from under it since it's still running. We're going to go back over to the other machine now, and we're going to double-click the TAN 2500 object. We're going to say Enable DOS Requester. We're going to go to the parameters. Server record identifier is going to be the DOS EtherLink 3, DET3E3, and the image ID is going to be the one I created, STD3HUMB, set. And now once this is done, I'll get ready in preparation. We're going to go over to our DOS machine, our Tandy 2500 again. There we are. And we're going to reboot it. Control-Alt-Del. And for whatever reason, the RAM check is going to run. Spacebar. Floppy seek. There we go. Control-Alt-B. RPL, F10. And we're downloading. That's good. And the remote IPL server is being called. Starting PC DOS. All right. So it looks like we got this in the first try. Starting the network. Now this first time, it's going to prompt me to log on, and it's going to ask me to type my user ID, which is Chris. We created it before. Oh, it's not. Shit. I wonder if I can reboot and fix this because it's TJB Chris, and I forgot. But hopefully it didn't save anything. I might have screwed myself there. We'll see what it does. Control-Alt-B plus F10. All right, we're loading. When you practice this with the username Chris, and then you change it to, you know, TJB Chris, yeah. Okay, starting the network. Prompt me for my user ID. Come on, Schwartz. Okay, drives are mapped. TJB Chris. Okay, workstation password. That's going to be for this. Confirm it. And now the domain, which I'm using the same password. So there's workstation password and domain password. If you use the same one, it won't prompt you again. Now, the difference here is that DOS, you notice there wasn't an option back when I was looking at the properties box on the server side when I set up the requester. Let's look at that. So if I look over here, you can see it doesn't, unlike the OS 2 requester, it doesn't ask me for the boot drive, the RAPL boot drive. And that's because you don't get one. It just maps drives Y and Z as work files and IBM LAN dollar. And now, like, for example, I'm in Z DOS LAN net, phi dir ... it shows me nothing, but it turns out I can figure out what's around me by doing set and looking at my path. Oh, there's a LAN directory, or a DOS directory, I'm sorry, in DOS LAN, one above me. So let's go there. ... whack DOS. Oh, look, there I am. There's DOS. I think we have DOS shell. We've got the IBM, the PC DOS shell, IBM DOS shell. It's very bland compared to the Microsoft one. Very IBM. Now it starts me in Z. So if I didn't know where the hell I was or where I was going, I can go to DOS LAN, and by the way, dir, no files, /a, no files. No files. It's kind of weird. I imagine that unlike the DOS, MS-DOS, and Windows environment, users got lost here. Man, I forgot where I was going. Okay, cd DOS LAN, again, nothing. And we've got the net utilities here. And the DOS utilities here, and we've got, do we have the edit command? Nope, we have qbasic/edit, right? No, we didn't have qbasic. Wow, thanks PC-DOS 7. Do we have a calculator? DRC star.exe. CRC. We got a calculator somewhere on here. acalc. Oh, look, 9 times 9 is 81. And of course, we have a Y drive. And this is my directory where I can kind of work and poke around and play and put stuff. So there's some other stuff here. This is my machine directory, and you can see OS2 is here. If you do have a machine directory, well, you do, this is where you can find those files. So if you flip between operating systems, or if your administrator does it for you, you do have some crossover. There's a Windows directory, implying that you can install Windows 3.1 here. I don't plan to do that. So that's kind of where we are. I basically have, let's see, we have star.exe/p. We have DOS swap, eject EM386. Actually, what do we have for memory, by the way? Conventional memory free. So, yeah, 448, largest executable program size. And this is the thing with large standard DOS, I'd say LAN server or even MS LAN server requester services. You know, your typical LAN manager, MS LAN manager, OS2 LAN manager. Their network components are very heavy, as you see. It's just a cost of doing business on a network workstation, but for a lot of the DOS applications you might be running, especially those that use XMS or EMS, which you can see we have some of both. No, we just have XMS, but either way, it may not matter that much. So, but it is something to keep in mind. You might run out of conventional memory in a configuration like this depending on the application. Now, I don't have any other applications on here. I just wanted to show the operating systems boot, which we did. So I think that's going to do it for this last installment of my RPL kind of mini-series. This is just something, again, fascinated with. I love networking, I love bootstrapping, and I especially love OS2, so I saved the best for last. Again, I have a lot of experience with OS2, so this was not as difficult as I might have imagined after I got OS2 installed on this thing. That was a bit of a pain in the ass. That said, I really enjoyed doing this. Next time we meet, I'm going to get back to something a little more Tandy. I might have a little bit of a surprise in store for you. We'll see what shows up in the mail. But either way, my next thing is going to be much more Tandy-centric. We'll get back to kind of the ethos of the channel here. But for now, I thought this was a nice little distraction. I've always wanted to do this, and I never had enough machines and enough hardware to be able to pull it off. And I get there's virtual machines, but for me, that just ain't where the fun at. It's the same reason I don't use the emulators when I've got the real thing right here. So that's going to do it. I hope you've enjoyed this video and this series. Thank you for sticking with me. And again, if I sound a little weird, the Rona's still kind of hanging. I'm not contagious anymore and the main symptoms are gone, but this one's, again, like the Boston song. Foreplay, long time. And this one's hanging on. So I'm TJB Chris. Thanks for watching. Cheers. I'll see you next time.